I'm JP Tuesday.
And I'm Kiki Cannon. As lifelong Disney fans, the work of countless talented Disney creatives have shaped our lives.
Now, as the Disney catalog expands, we're taking a journey through film and television to discover if that spark that shaped us as children lives on in adulthood.
Does your favorite Disney media still cast that same spell? Join us as we find out. We are Rewatching the Magic.
Hi, Kiki.
Hi, Tuesday.
Kiki, I'm talking to a girl named Kiki.
I am so happy. I have been wanting to do this movie since it was announced, and I realized it was going to be Disney.
Do you feel pretty today, Kiki?
I never feel pretty, no.
So
that's why this is an audio podcast and not a video one.
So, we are talking about the 2021 remake of West Side Story. There's a lot of history with this. This, one of the greatest Broadway musicals of all time. A Academy Award-winning Best Picture film in 1962. The original film is a classic. And Steven Spielberg says, I want to try my hand. When Spielberg says he wants to do something, you let him do it.
You had me at Steven Spielberg wants to do a musical, and then he's like, oh, no, I want to do a Sondheim musical. And then I was like, oh, yes, please. Yes, please. Which one do you want to do? I want to do West Side Story. Yes, please.
Yeah, of course, based off Romeo and Juliet. West Side Story, the story of the Puerto Rican family in the formerly all-white neighborhood and the white gang that kind of wants their turf back. Kudos to the remake for keeping it in the 1950s. And
there is no update. This is the straight up story as it was intended, as it was originally written.
And when the original Broadway musical came out, that was contemporary. This play did come out in the 1950s.
When the original film was made, this film opens, they're demolishing the slums to build what would become Lincoln Center. The original film was kind of filmed on top of the rubble as they were building it, because that is the neighborhood it was written about. It is interesting that this film starts with, this is the future side of Lincoln Center, to remind you that we like this, we're artists and moviegoers, and, if you're watching this film, you're the sort of person that likes this kind of thing. They used eminent domain to take this land and tear down these homes and businesses and force these people out, and then build Lincoln Center and, everything that's around there now and gentrify the area. So art centers and stuff are cool. Yes, we want them, but remember the history of how we got there.
And as I said, the movie itself takes place in 1957, which is the same year that the original musical came on Broadway. Again, at the time, the play was contemporary and not a period piece. Of course, by the time we get to 1961, the film version comes out. And I had forgotten this when I made last week's comment. Disney doesn't own the original film version of West Side Story. That is owned by MGM. And recently we found out that MGM just got purchased by Amazon.
Yep, that is kind of recently breaking news as to when we are recording this. My dog is not too happy about that merger.
But if you do want to watch the original 1961 film West Side Story, it is available on HBO Max, as is this version. Late last year, Disney and Warner made an agreement for this final year of this Fox HBO deal that they would have some shared movies. So West Side Story 2021 is available on both Disney Plus and HBO Max.
Yeah, it is really interesting to have that kind of shared deal. It's also kind of cool. I mean, we keep talking about there's enough pie to go around.
Again, at least for this year, the final year of this contract, and next year,
Yeah,
oh,
next year they're going to get greedy and be like, my pie. But, you know,
for now.
for now it's cool. It's very interesting the way this happened. This was one of those things of that Spielberg was like, I want to direct West Side Story, and Fox was like, Spielberg wants to direct West Side Story. Somebody get the rights to West Side Story. It was one of those things of like, you know, famous director has a thought, and studio is like, oh my god, we better make that happen.
And this was a deal that was made before the Disney merger. Like, this was already in discussions. Fox, before being bought by Disney, had to negotiate the film rights. I don't know if MGM was involved with that, but 20th Century Fox made the deal, and around the time everything was going to start is when Disney bought 20th Century Fox, and here we are.
Yeah, it is interesting that with all these deals and mergers and how long it takes to produce things. We've talked before about the fact that, you know, one of our friends just woke up one day and was like, "Oh, wait, I work for Disney now. Uh, when did that happen?" So that's become our running joke, is that eventually everybody's just going to wake up one day and just be like, "Oh, wait, when did I start working for Disney?" But that does so bizarrely frequently happen in entertainment, that you just sign on for a job and then some weird merger happens and you find yourself working for a completely different corporation. This was such a passion project for Spielberg, because if you watch the credits, you'll see that there is a title card at the end of the film that just says "For Dad." His father was a big fan of musicals. His father just recently passed away. In fact, during the production of this film, his father was over 100 years old. When Spielberg was a kid, they didn't really listen to pop music. And he always said that the soundtrack to West Side Story was the first pop music he ever remembered being played on the record player at his house. That they had the album to West Side Story. He also does a lot throughout his work with, you know, racial division.
The man made Schindler's List.
I mean, he made Schindler's List. He made The Color Purple. He made Amistad. Munich, Lincoln. It is a big theme in his work. Growing up the way that he did, and the sorts of themes that he comes back to, you can absolutely see why West Side Story would appeal to him.
There's a lot of in this movie that still resonates in real life today, especially with the overt racism.
Absolutely, which is unfortunate.
And I will give it this movie. Spielberg does not shy away from it. I think there's more evidence of the racism in this movie than the original film.
The interesting thing is, and I am going to defer to Kyle Colgren's wonderful video that he did on West Side Story during one of his Summer of Shakespeare videos. Go look it up on YouTube. Brows Held High, Summer of Shakespeare, West Side Story. He talks about, in his dissection of the 1961 film, that a modern audience looking at that film absolutely sees it as a depiction of systemic racism. However, if you go back and look at critics of the time talking about the film, the critics in 1961 saw the film as a depiction of everything that was wrong with youth culture on an individual level. In other words, they saw the film as, oh, these foolish children If these foolish children could just stop their individual nitpicky fights, then the world would be a better place. They saw the point of the film as Doc's line, which is a character that is not in this new film. We'll get into it. Doc, who runs the pharmacy that the Jets hang out in the original film and in the original play, he has a line in the original film and play where he says, I forget the exact line, but he says something to the effects of, the world would be better if you kids would just stop fighting. And all the critics of the time grabbed onto that line. But what Kyle points out in his video is that nobody at the time that he found, the critics he looked at, ever point out that the next line in the play is one of the Jets responding, "We didn't make the world." In other words, these kids are just responding to the world that they live in. They didn't set up the system. They're just trying to survive it, which was the point that Sondheim and Bernstein and, the creators of the play were trying to get across. And what follows immediately after that line in the original play is the G Officer Krupke song, where the kids try to explain to the cop that they're not the bad guys, they're just trying to survive. It's a much longer version of that line. The interesting thing is that the new film, Spielberg's version, cuts that part out entirely, because Spielberg's version absolutely is about systemic racism. If you miss that this film is about systemic racism, you have turned off your entire brain.
Another thing that I did like about this remake, and this is a product of more modern revivals of West Side Story, is there's more Spanish in the movie. Sometimes there's whole conversations that happen in Spanish. The last 20 or so years with revivals, they've had more Latino influence, Latino stage directors and whatnot, kind of making it a little bit more authentic. And I will give props to Spielberg on that one for focusing that in the movie.
A lot of people came at him for the fact that there are no subtitles in this film. There are no burned in subtitles. And interestingly, I discovered something in the rewatch, because I watched this film the week it came out, the week it hit Disney Plus. I had been waiting to see this because of COVID. I was not able to see it in theaters. So when it hit Disney Plus, I was right there waiting to see it. And when it initially hit Disney Plus, I watch everything with captions if they're available. So I watched it with captions, and much to my dismay, whenever characters were speaking Spanish, the captions just said speaking Spanish or just Spanish. They did not caption the Spanish. And that very much annoyed me, because a hearing audience would hear the Spanish. Whether or not you understand the Spanish is a completely different, point, okay? A hearing audience would hear the Spanish words. Therefore, you should caption the Spanish as well. A note for anyone who may be out there, who may end up in the job of providing closed captioning services: caption anything that a hearing person would hear. Interestingly, when I did the rewatch for this podcast, the Spanish has been added to the captions now.
I'm guessing somebody complained, and
I hope that is what happened. Thank you, Disney Plus, for adding that. My Spanish is almost non-existent, but it did very much help me. I understood much more of the movie. But back to the original point, there are no burned-in English subtitles for the Spanish. Spielberg says the reason that he did not subtitle it for the English-speaking audience is because he thought that would give the idea that English was the superior or supreme or preferred language. I had no trouble understanding the emotion of that scene, or any of the scenes where it's primarily in Spanish. because you can still understand the body language, the tone of the voice. I may not understand the exact words that they're saying, but I can understand when Maria is mad at Bernardo, or Bernardo is, being overbearing to Maria. I still understand the emotions of the characters, even if I don't understand the precise wording of every line. And in those scenes, that's all I need. We have a really good cast, but interestingly, most of them not really a cast that had a lot of screen time. So we're not going to be going through them individually, because I'm just going to put it out there. Unless you are a really, really big theater geek, you have not heard of most of this cast prior to this film.
So this is a first film for most of this cast.
As far as I have been able to tell, it really is kind of the quote-unquote big break for a lot of this cast. So I'm just going to go through a couple of notables. We have, of course, I'm going to start with the big one, because you gotta love her. We've got Rita Moreno coming back.
Yep. She was Anita in the 1961 film. When it was announced that she was going to come back for this movie, a lot of the theater geeks and musical geeks were like up and down, like, "Yay, Rita's coming back!" But who's she playing?
And the big answer to that is they created a character so she could come back.
She pretty much takes over the role of Doc, but in this one, she's Valentina, Doc's Puerto Rican wife.
Yeah, his widow. They took the role of Doc and they've given it to Valentina, and they've created this side story of a couple to mirror the story of Tony and Maria. That there was this marriage between a white man and a Puerto Rican woman in this same neighborhood. They were able to make it work despite everything and spent many happy years together. He has passed, presumably of old age. She now continues to run the pharmacy in his stead and has become a mentor to Tony and his boss, and helps him and the Jets out. And it's a really compelling role. Interestingly, she talks about her casting in the original film, even though it was her big break, and she was basically like the only Latina actress in the original film. They darkened her skin for the role because they didn't think she looked ethnic enough. She's talked for years about how that really kind of did some mental damage to her. Of course, Rita Moreno did win the Oscar for her portrayal of Anita. And interestingly enough, she is also one of the few that has won the EGOT. That, of course, is the Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tony. Interestingly enough, though, the Grammy is for her work on The Electric Company. Isn't she the one from The Electric Company that screams, "Hey, you guys"?
A lot of people did in that show.
But
though.
yeah, but it blew my mind when I realized that. But the cool thing is that one of her Emmys is for her work on The Muppet Show, which I always love. Yeah, her appearance on The Muppet Show is what won one of her 2 Emmys. The cool thing about her Tony Award is that she won it for her portrayal of a character that she did in a play called The Ritz, which was kind of a character that she sort of created as a parody of all of the weird sort of Latina stereotypes that she'd always been asked to play. And she did it after being in kind of a deep depression about being typecast after doing the role of Anita. She thought it was that doing that character and playing that role, she thought that was going to jumpstart her career, and instead it kind of stalled her career for many years. But I love that she's back doing the same thing for a different actress, because in this version, Anita is played by Ariana DeBose, who does it so beautifully. If you saw her before this film, it was probably because you watched Hamilton on Disney Plus. She is in that version, but she is just in the ensemble. However, she does have a striking look, so I do remember seeing her in the ensemble and kind of going, who's that? She's a really good dancer. She has a really nice look to her, you know? She has now, you know, this is kind of her big moment. It is so cool to watch her. She has been having a moment at the awards shows. We're recording this before the Oscars, so we have no idea how that's going to go. But I wish her well. Like I said, this was a first time out for a lot of people, specifically for our lead actress. This is the first film for Rachel Zegler. She's already won the Golden Globe when we record this. We talked about her before on the show because she has also been cast as the live-action Snow White for Disney, which they are filming right now.
As we're talking, yeah.
As we are talking, you know, literally it's in production. So there was a bit of controversy that has already kind of been solved by the time we're recording this.
Yeah, very recent controversy.
Yeah, very recent controversy. People had asked her, like, oh, who are you going to be wearing to the Oscars? And she was like, I'm going to be wearing sweatpants and my boyfriend's flannel shirt because I wasn't invited to the Oscars.
You think that the female lead of one of the nominees for Best Picture would at least get an invitation to the Oscars?
Yeah, you would. I mean, this is her first film.
I mean, she's not up for Best Lead Actress, obviously.
Yeah.
But you would think that, okay, you're part of the cast, she's not
just part of the cast, she is the lead.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they did not even consider inviting her when the Oscars themselves has had a lot of backlash for lack of representation.
I mean, you want to talk about Oscars so white? This immediately caused an absolute fury online. I mean, it was just an Instagram post. She just kind of tossed off an Instagram post like, you know, hey, I'm going to be rooting for everybody and the film and, you know, go all my co-stars, go Ariana kind of thing. The internet lost its absolute mind, which, fair.
This story does have a sort of happy ending, I guess.
Yeah, as of the time we're recording this, which, as we said, before the ceremony takes place, here's an interesting thing. I want to point out somebody who did speak up in her defense. Russ Tamblyn, who was the actor who played Riff in the original film, he sent out a message saying, as a voting member, meaning of the Academy, and the original Riff, let me say, it is your duty to find Rachel a seat at the Oscars. When they say representation matters, this is what that means. Please do right by her.
Go Riff.
Yeah, Russ Tamblyn is a pretty cool guy. I'll just say that. I've been a fan of his for my entire life. Next day, the Academy invited Rachel to be a presenter at the Oscars.
When your presenters are Tony Hawk and DJ Khaled, yeah.
What's DJ Khaled gonna present? His name? He's just gonna walk up there and be like, DJ Khaled, and then walk off stage. The interesting thing is, though, is that they did have to reconfigure the shooting schedule for Snow White because she was in London at the time, because they're filming Snow White in, like we said, literally as we're recording this, just days before the Oscars. But you know, Disney knows what's good, so they did that. We're hoping that all goes well, and if I were a designer, I would want to be the person she is wearing when she presents at the Oscars, because you know everybody wants to know who she's going to be wearing as her I am presenting at the Oscars after the Oscars tried to not have me be at the Oscars dress.
Yeah.
You want to be that designer. Interestingly, as Officer Krupke, they got Brian Darcy James, who is a freaking legend.
Broadway legend, honestly, yeah.
Yeah, Broadway legend, great voice, does not sing in this film.
I've seen Brian Darcy James perform in Shrek the Musical.
Yeah, he's a good Shrek. He's also King George in Hamilton. He's done that role. But yeah, I mean, he's great. He's been in Something Rotten and, you know, everything. He's really good in this, and I think it's just, you don't care if you're singing or not. If you get a chance to be in Steven Spielberg's West Side Story, you don't say no to that. I just want to give a couple of quick shout outs to David Alvarez, who is Bernardo in this. Absolutely, oh my goodness, so good in this. He was one of the original Billy Elliots in the Broadway production of Billy Elliot, and he is one of the youngest winners of the Tony for Best Actor in a Lead Role. So good in this. But this is like kind of his first real big role. Mike Feist, I think is his last name. He was the original Morris Delancey in Newsies on Broadway. So there's the Disney connection for you. Also, for the theater geeks out there, he was also the original Connor in Dear Evan Hansen. This is his first major film role. He is fire in this film. I really want to give a shout out to somebody who I really hope has just an excellent career after this film, because it's kind of their first film role too. They changed the role of Anybody's in this film, and it went to an actor named Iris Menace, and they are so good.
Yeah, in the original film, Anybody's was a tomboy girl. In this one, Anybody's is a non-binary trans character.
At one point asserts their gender identity as not a girl. We're not really sure beyond that.
They are very angry when referred to as a girl by the Jets.
However, at the end of the film, they are referred to as a boy by another character and seem to be okay with that. But it's kind of interesting to see that. And I like the acknowledgement that trans and non-binary people have kind of always been there, living alongside of us, whether or not we've chosen to acknowledge them.
Kudos to Spielberg for going that direction.
Iris just such a good presence on screen,
especially towards the end of the film.
Every time they're on camera, you can't really ignore them. I really hope that it leads to more work, because I think that they could really become a bigger name. Finally, rounding out kind of the named cast, we have Ansel Elgort playing Tony. So that'll do it for cast.
Yeah.
So you wanna get into the plot and kind of how they changed it, because I think a lot of people listening will have probably seen the original film, maybe, or a stage version. If not, you definitely know the story of Romeo and Juliet. Kind of follows that same thing. There are a lot of kind of changes that they made in micro from the 61 film. Interestingly, most of the changes that they did took it back in line with the stage version. They did change, like we've already said, the character of Doc into Valentina, added that new subplot. They've added a black character, which was not in the original, and it was just kind of to remind you, like, hey, black people existed in 50s New York too.
Yeah.
Because that was kind of overlooked, mostly because, well, this was focusing on racial tensions between the white and Puerto Rican community of the 1950s. So it kind of just, I don't want to overlook that, but it wasn't really what they were focusing on. They do change the order of some of the songs, which the 61 film did as well. The biggest change that people will notice is they give Somewhere to Valentina. It is no longer given to Maria and Tony, It is given to Valentina, and it is sung over the aftermath of Bernardo's death. And Riff's too, but yeah. Everybody kind of forgets about Riff immediately.
It's kind of sung more of a memory, like, singing up, because they show pictures of Doc with Valentina in the picture, in the black and white pictures you see in throughout the drugstore. So it's kind of like a partial her reminiscing about Doc, and also, will there be somewhere for us when all these changes happens to the neighborhood?
But it's also, there is that line of, we'll find a new way of living, we'll find a way of forgiving. It is more of a plea for peace and racial justice, and can we please stop fighting already? I absolutely adore that scene, because it is Rita Moreno alone, very quietly, with her delicate way, in this soft, sweet voice, absolutely reaching into your chest, pulling out your heart, and stomping on it right in front of you with this song. If you are not absolutely destroyed by the end of that number, you have no soul.
Like you said last week with Encanto, she'll rip your heart, I'll step on it, and you'll thank her for it.
Yeah, it is just, I mean, that scene, when I first saw it, I was not prepared. I have seen version after version of this play. I have seen that song done so many times by so many different people. I was not prepared for any of that. Oh my goodness.
And the backdrop of this is Tony and Maria.
Yeah, it is their kind of consummation of their relationship going on in the background.
Because that's when you do, after your brother's killed, is sleep with his killer.
Well, when else are they going to have a chance? The other thing is that they've changed I Feel Pretty. In the 61 film, it takes place in Maria's bedroom, with some of her friends, and they're, In this one, it takes at her job.
She puts on some of the clothing in there and kind of goes through the whole song.
And the interesting thing is, they were going to cut this number completely.
How do you cut I Feel Pretty if it's one of the most iconic songs from the play?
Well, the interesting thing is that Sondheim never wanted this number in the play, it seems, because it was the number coming back from intermission. the rumble where Riff and Bernardo dies is originally, that's where intermission goes. So you have the big fight and the death. Tony runs away, intermission. Everybody goes to intermission, and the producers originally were like, no, you need a bright, happy number to get people back into the play after intermission. And they fought it and fought it and fought it. And eventually the producers won out, is how I understand the story. And in the original film, they changed it so that it comes earlier, so that you don't have it, well, your brother's killed, I feel pretty, oh, so pretty. It's like, because it is a tonal whiplash.
Yeah, but again, like in the play and like in this part, she has no idea what's going on at this point.
Well, yeah. And the thing is that Tony Kushner is the one that convinced them to keep it. Because one, how do you cut I Feel Pretty? It's iconic. But two, when you watch this film, it goes from like, oh, Happy Dancing Maria, it sort of becomes a horror piece. You are not happy watching this version. I'm sorry. There is a sense of dread watching I Feel Pretty in this version, because the entire time you are watching that number, you are waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Yeah, your brother just died in the last scene. Your boyfriend is his killer. What's gonna happen now? And then it happens right there.
Yeah, it's Chino who delivers the news by coming to find Maria at work. Okay, I love this film so very much. She's leaving work and she realizes, like, oh, I didn't punch my time card. I have to go back. And she leaves the group of girls. And just before we see, Chino, or before we hear Chino, the group of girls leaves her. And if you notice, on the wall right next to Maria, as she is separated from the group of girls, is a fallout shelter sign. Because it's 1950s New York. But also, she's about to experience the fallout from what just... what a perfect visual metaphor.
The bomb is about to drop on her life.
And I didn't even pick up on that in the first viewing. And I'm watching it and I'm like, oh my God, I love how perfectly thought out every single frame of this film is. It's just so beautiful. And
I mean, maybe I'm misremembering things, but I love Chino's change in the movie. Because when we first meet Chino, he's kind of nerdy, kind of shy, kind of like, he's supposed to be Maria's boyfriend.
He's got a job repairing adding machines, or he's learning he's not even there yet. He's learning how to repair adding machines. He's going to be the guy repairing adding machines.
Like, he has the, and he has the glasses and everything. And once the rumble starts and he takes those glasses off, there's that change in him.
Just like,
and I ain't talking Superman. I mean, it's like he just,
yeah.
It's sort of an innocence lost moment. Like,
well, he spends the whole film wanting to be Bernardo. And that's the whole conversation at the beginning of the film when he's introduced. He's like, I want to be the guy that fights for my people. I want to be the guy that protects And Bernardo keeps saying, like, Maria does not want a guy like me.
But being him didn't get him Maria either.
Yeah. I mean, it got him jail,
But it's like,
film.
and then, after Bernardo's dead, what did Bernardo fight? What did he die for? What did he fight for?
A pile of rubble. I mean, in the end.
Yeah.
A neighborhood no one remembers.
A neighborhood that no longer exists.
Yeah. It's such a absolute tragedy on so many levels,
So many characters start out, like, you have, again, obviously, Chino, who has a great future ahead of him, and he throws it away for revenge. You've got Tony, who, after spending a year or so in jail, who has cleaned himself up, who has going to fly straight. He's gonna fly straight. He's gonna be a good guy now. He's gonna do it the right way. Is the old phrase from The Godfather? Just when I thought I was out, they dragged me back in. He gets pulled back into that old gang life, and it's the end of him.
And the thing is that it's because he didn't listen. He says, Maria, I want to be with you. I'll do anything for you. And she's like, okay, don't go to that fight. Tony, what did you do? Did you go to the fight? Yeah, I went to the fight. Like,
but
well,
he thinks, oh, I'm going to stop the fight from happening. And yeah, he ends up killing Bernardo.
But it's like, you had one job, It's like,
listen to your woman. That's what I would say. Listen to your woman.
It's like she asked, well, and the same thing with Bernardo and Anita.
Mm-hmm.
She asked him the same thing. Don't go to the fight.
And it cost both of them their lives.
It's interesting because they changed 2 other songs and turned them into my favorite now versions of those songs that I've ever seen staged or filmed. One of them is the song Cool. Originally, it's kind of a thing after the death of Riff in the original film. That is, they're gathered in docks, I believe it is. The Jets are trying to figure out, like, what are we going to do about it? How do we strike back at the Sharks? And a character named Ice is now the de facto leader because Riff is dead. And he is the one that cautions them to not immediately go to war. But in this version, it's right after Riff gets the gun. He buys a gun for the Rumble. And Tony finds out about it. And Tony confronts Riff.
To cool him down. Stay cool. Don't lose your head over this. And
yeah,
Riff doesn't listen.
And they kind of turn the dance number into a keep away with the gun, which Tony ends up losing, basically. And Riff's like, nope. I'm still going.
Pow.
Yeah. And it is now my favorite version that I've ever seen. Putting it before the Rumble. It makes it a bit more tragic than after the Rumble.
And just how much that gun comes into play for the rest of this play. Of this movie.
That Tony is trying to remove the gun from the scenario, and it ends up being the gun that kills him. The other one that they've changed was Officer Krupke.
Yeah, it's just them singing to each other. The Jets singing to each other rather than singing to Officer Krupke.
I actually love this way more.
Because, to set the scenario, anybody's has kind of gotten loose. Anybody's has lost their mind over the whole I'm not a girl, to prove that they are just as tough as any of the other boys, takes out most of the police officers and bloodies up. Oh, wow. And they're out of there. The entire police force is after anybody's. Leave the police office empty except for the Jets. And then they go into Dear Officer Krupke.
I really like it because they've added back in the original 1957 lyrics. I like the staging of it. I like them holding like the mock trial. I like all the bits with the costumes. I like the choreography in the scene. I think the whole thing works. I like the woman who's just kind of in the corner observing them. I guess she's a hooker or something. I don't really know who she is. But it seems like she's been there before. She seems to have the key and everything, just kind of locks herself in a cell. It's kind of very Otis from Andy Griffith. I just love this scene so much. But that is now my favorite version of G. Officer Krupke. I love it so much. And I think it works better for Officer Krupke not being there, because I kind of like the bravado of the Jets without the officer being there, because you're always braver when the authority figure's not there, you know? Like, oh, if he was here, you know what I'd tell him? And then, like, but then he walks in and they're like, sorry,
Hello,
officer,
sir.
don't send me to jail, you know? Like, they changed America a bit as well. There are a couple of new lines, and it's a kind of dance in the street.
They made America the big show-stopping number of the movie.
And it works so well. The choreography in there. Bernardo and Anita play so well off of each other. Those two actors are the absolute stars of the film. Not to downplay Rachel Ziegler at all. I think she is absolutely going places. I can't wait to see what she does in Snow White. The duo that they've got in David Alvarez and Ariana DeBose. Oh my goodness. Every second they spend on screen together, that is an absolute combo that I would watch in anything. Put those two on screen together, I will watch it. That was absolute genius casting.
I have no idea how we would get to the part I want to talk about, but we kind of have to talk about what happens to Anita. Trigger warning, sexual assault.
Yeah. They kind of glossed over it
in the original
film, but it is in the stage play.
Yeah, and that whole setup. Now again, it's one of the most well-known part of the story. So, but
I mean, it's in the original film. I'm not going to say it's not in the original film, but it's not as in the original film as it is in this.
I'm going to say at the way they set this whole thing up, and knowing what I knew about the story going into it, oh no, and because we get Officer Krupke trying to get some information about Tony, Maria and Anita trying to cover their bases. They're like, oh, I never danced with a white boy, blah, blah, blah. Maria sends Anita to Doc's. Hey, tell Valentina I'll meet his cousin tomorrow. And Anita goes down to Doc's to try to give the message to Tony that Maria's running late because of the officer. Keep in mind that Riff is dead, and yeah, the Jet, that whole scenario, the whole setup, like the Jet girls are trying to get Anita out of there. Hey, we don't want any Spanish people here right now. We don't want to speak in Spanish right now. We don't want any part of the Spanish people right now because we're grieving. The fact that they purposely lock out their girlfriends as they're banging on the door, like, they don't like Anita because she's Puerto Rican, but they know what their boyfriends are about to do to her. And they're just banging on that door. Don't hurt her. Don't hurt her. As they try to assault her. They play music. Hey, you wanted to dance at the dance. Why don't you dance for us now? And that whole setup makes it so much more uncomfortable than I've seen it in the original version. And on one hand, I hate Spielberg for it, but I love that he made it uncomfortable because of the recontextualization of Doc into Valentina. It makes the aftermath much more impactful because, granted, Valentina gets the boys off of her and everything, and Anita just goes off on Valentina, calls her a traitor to her own kind for siding with the white boys, and especially letting them do what they did to her in that moment. And it's more impactful to Valentina. Like we said, the whole point of the new character of Valentina is to show that there could be something between Tony and Maria in the future because, hey, Doc and Valentina have something.
Yeah, the original play and the original film do kind of have this, the tragedy of, like, well, they were from two different worlds. It could never be. But this one is very interesting in the fact that it shows that, like, no, it could be. There was a possibility here. It's not that they're too different and, in Anita's words, stick to your own kind. It's that the racial hatred is ridiculous. The systemic issues are ridiculous and need to be fixed. The look that Valentina gives them when they tell Anita to go back to where you came from. Oh my goodness. And bravo to Valentina for straight up calling them racist. And also rapists. Mm-hmm. That she names it. She was like, "You were about to rape a girl in my store. How dare you?
You dishonor yourself. You dishonor your dead."
And also that she pulls out the "I know your mother's" card.
Yeah.
She was like, "I know your people, okay?"
It's said throughout the movie that she's known these kids since they were children.
And I mean, most of them still kind of are children. I mean, it's said that, like, Maria's 18 and most of them are kind of like 19 or 20 maybe, but like most of them seem to be kind of high school or just out of.
It's the added, Anita calling Valentina a traitor to her people. I mean, this is the thing that ruins Anita's American dream in all versions of the story. Like I said, she did a whole song about how she wants to assimilate into American society. And in this one moment, all of that's ruined for her. She doesn't want to be part of it. If this is what America is all about, she'll go back to the island.
Yeah, I don't want to be here with animals like you,
She says it in Spanish. I am not American. I'm Puerto Rican.
Yeah. And that's when she decides to tell the lie that Marie is dead,
Yeah.
Which leads to the final tragedy. But
did she intend for Tony to get killed?
I don't think so. I think she just wanted him to go away. I don't think she thought he would look for Chino. I think she thought he would just be like, okay, well, screw it.
He's just like all these other animals. He'll run away too.
Yeah. I want to back up a little bit and talk about a couple of other little bits, because there's so many things that are just so amazing about this. We got to talk about the thing that went viral. Of course, the moment that went viral is the kind of impossible shot. The entrance into the dance at the gym. It's a trick shot. It looks like it's one continuous shot, but of course it's currently kind of impossible with our levels of technology. I mean, maybe you could have done it with a drone where it follows Bernardo and Anita into the dance and then flies over all the dancers and comes to rest on the other side of the gym. So you get this kind of really amazing one-shot flyover of the entire dance. Oh my goodness, that shot. And it went viral for a reason. I mean, there's a whole Twitter thread of Guillermo del Toro just losing his mind over that shot for good reason. Somehow magically, impossibly edited together to make it look like a single shot. I have no idea how it's done. But I want someone to break it down. Like I want like entire film classes taught on how they did that shot, because oh my god, it's beautiful. And
this is one of those things I kind of miss in terms of regular special features, because you can do an entire special feature documentary on that one scene.
Yeah, I know. I want like a 30-minute featurette on just, sit down and break down every, it's like a 45-second shot, and I want like an entire hour-long documentary on how we did that one shot. I know that they've said it also took like a complicated like light dimmer system to make sure that they could change the lighting in each individual part of the set to make sure it was kind of continuously lit in different ways to make sure. I mean, it's ridiculously complicated in order to do, and like that whole dance at the gym sequence is just a masterclass in like, this is why Spielberg is the ultimate. There are so many absolutely beautiful things about this. You know, the costumes for this are just gorgeous. Everything about, you know, the set dressing and the and the singing, of course. When they get to like I Have a Love, you know, Boy Like that whole sequence at the end with Maria and Anita goes to the bed, the empty bed now that will no longer have Bernardo in it, you know.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. If she wins the Oscar, it is going to be on the back of that one moment of her like grabbing the railing of the bed, and oh my goodness. This film, I told somebody that this film is 90% perfect. And I think unfortunately it's time to talk about that 10%. About 8% of the not perfect in this film is Tony. Tony in this film does not work.
The way he's acted or the way he's written? Or both?
The way he's acted. I mean, the writing is the same. A different actor in this, but the acting is flat and the singing is worse. Apparently, he was trained as a dancer, I'm told, but it doesn't really come across. The cool sequence is kind of the best you get, and it's fine. It's the best it gets. The meeting between Tony and Maria in the gym where they dance under the bleachers. Maria is beautiful. She moves beautifully, but she kind of just dances around him. They're supposed to dance together. Tony does not dance really in that sequence. Go back and watch it. He barely moves. She does this beautiful kind of, you know, balletic thing around him, and he kind of stands there. It's bad, and his voice is passable if you...
My only thing, I mean, if I had to make a complaint, is that he doesn't really put the emotion into the song Maria as I think he should.
Well, the thing is it's kind of a karaoke version. And I like me some karaoke. It's fun, but when you're singing next to an entire cast of Tony Award-winning actors, I mean, these people have absolutely slayed on Broadway, even if they're not known for, you know, like big film performances, you know. And even Rachel in the female lead here, she's bringing it. She has an incredible voice, and this, of course, everybody's got to start somewhere, and she's starting big. I can absolutely see, you know, she's very young, of course, but I can absolutely see her going places. But he is vocally not up to this. And it just harms everything. I don't really know what the thinking was there. I guess because he was a name and everybody knew him from other things.
Possibly.
And there's not really a name. I mean, Rita Moreno is a name, but as far as the younger cast, they went for stage actors. There's not really a name draw except for the actor playing Tony. And unfortunately, that is the Achilles heel of this film. The other kind of 2% maybe that doesn't really work is the ending, I'm going to say, falls a little flat. It feels a bit rushed.
I mean, we're 2.5 hours into this movie, and it feels like, well, we can't have this be 3. We got to wrap this up.
It does feel a bit like that, and I hate to say it because the ending in the 61 film is one of my favorite things. Natalie Wood absolutely nails that final speech, and I was waiting to see how Rachel Ziegler was going to do it. And unfortunately, I cannot blame her for what happens because there is no speech to give. It's like 2 lines. Natalie Wood is given a passage that is so beautiful. And it's a passage that they kind of tried to do, but it needed to be longer.
Yeah, she points the gun at the other gang members, and I can kill because I hate now. And that's kind of it.
Yeah, but the original speech that Maria gives, at least in the 61 film, because we're comparing the film versions here rather than the stage play, is she never really understood killing. She never had it in her to kill. But now she understands that killing comes from a place of hate. And so now she thinks she can kill because now she has hate. And Natalie Wood's version of that is just one of the best speeches in film history. It's such a good bit of writing, and as much as I love Kushner as a writer, he kind of glosses over it. And it is the emotional core of the piece. This naive little girl who did not understand the racial tensions around her, did not understand why her brother was in this gang, did not understand Tony's background, his time spent in jail, his gang affiliate. She didn't understand any of it. And now she does. And now she has the gun. And there is a real moment in that first film of what's she going to do? Because if you know your Shakespeare, this never ends well for Juliet. There is a real moment where Maria could be lying on that pavement. There are so many ways this could go, and it's a real tension for the audience watching it for the first time. And there is no tension in that moment in this film. There is never a second that I think an audience watching this for the first time ever believes she's going to pull that trigger because the moment passes too fast. The other problem is that in the original film, there is that moment of picking up Tony's body, where she says, "Don't touch him," and the Jets try to pick up his body. They struggle with it, and the sharks step in, and there's that moment of, are they going to fight? But then you realize that no, the sharks really are sorry that it's come to this. They just want to help honor the dead. And they realize how torn up Maria is, and they love Maria. So they want to help carry Tony's body. But in this one, again, it's too quick. It's just, there's never that tension. There's never that stare down. It's just like,
they just pick them
well,
up. Like,
time to take out the trash. Like, it really is, like, it's too quick. It is so kind of, the ending is so kind of speed run, and we have built so long to get to this tragedy, not to let it breathe. And it should be allowed to breathe. The weight of that should be allowed to sit with the audience. But, 90% of a perfect movie is still better than almost anything else you'll see.
So on that, let's ask the question, Kiki. Does West Side Story 2021 have the magic?
Of course. If you've not been listening, come on.
I'm going to say yes. I agree with your your shortcomings of the movie. Again, ending goes a little too fast. So yeah, I would say if you have not seen this version of the film, give it a chance, give it a watch. I would recommend, if you have the time to do so, and if you're on HBO Max, watch the original and watch this, and then make up your own mind.
Yeah, the original is amazing too. It's one of my favorite films still. I mean, they're both great in their own unique and distinct way.
All right, so let's move on to next week. This is a movie that I had been looking forward to. One of the many, many movies that COVID had delayed and delayed and delayed. And when it finally came out, I was there first day to see it, and I love this movie. You wanted to put this on the list, and we're going to be talking about it. Free Guy.
Yeah. Getting our video game on.
Oh, it's the GTA movie I always wanted. So come back next week for Free Guy, and we will talk to you all then. Bye.
Bye. Don't let the magic stop here.
Join our conversation online on Facebook at Rewatching the Magic.
Twitter at Rewatch the Magic.
And of course, new episodes every week at rewatchingthemagic.podbean.com.
Remember, the magic is for everyone.
It only stops if you let it.